officials and community leaders to improve the well-being of underserved communities around the world. This is particularly so in areas such as housing, employment, business, and criminal justice. His nationally acclaimed Texas Offenders Reentry Initiative has helped thousands of returning citizens find jobs, complete their education, and reunite with their families. Through the T.D. Jakes Foundation, he is working to close the digital divide, providing free online STEM training to thousands of young people from vulnerable communities. His single-family housing development in South Dallas is a national model for mixed-income housing, and he is a mentor to numerous entrepreneurs.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to go to school.
Let me set him up, John. Let me set him up.
Please, go ahead, Lisa.
Let's talk about the bishop. Bishop T.D. Jakes is a world-renowned bishop, author, and media mogul. He preached his first sermon in 1976 and started the Potter's House in 1996. He is one of the most coveted faith-based influencers in business, education, film, and entertainment, and he has advised the last 3 presidents. I think the church better say amen.
Amen. This is a very special person to me. I consider very few people, though, I mean, most people call me and they want my opinion about this, opinion about that. I call Bishop Jakes to ask his opinion about this and about that. He is an underground technologist. He is a social media and technology genius. This guy knows. He gets data reports on the technology and social media impact daily, just along with the financial reports.
He's watching his metrics. He's measuring and managing every day.
He runs a brand, a business, a faith, a ministry, an operation. He does well and does good too. He has integrity. He's transparent. The way he is privately is the way he is publicly. Just more fun privately, but the same guy. I love our 2 a.m., midnight to 2 a.m. text message conversations.
Okay, I love you, Bishop, but I'm going to watch you on TV. We're not doing 2 a.m. We're not doing that, Bishop. My grandfather used to do that at 2 a.m.
Yes.
He'd come and want to hear me say his poem, I Am Somebody, here in Atlanta that he wrote back in the 1950s, right after the Klan burned a cross on his front yard.
So, Bishop, Lisa Borders, in addition to being former president of the WNBA, head of the Coca-Cola Foundation, president of the Coca-Cola Foundation, president of the Atlanta City Council. Her father was one of the pastors in the civil rights movement here, along with Andrew Young and Dr. King and others. So she's got this vaulted, the Borders family, Reverend Borders. So she's in the same league as you. And Ambassador Young sends his best, by the way. He was feeling a little under the weather this morning, but he's here with us in spirit. We just told him he's feeling a little under the weather. He said, should I come? I said, no, stay right there. We don't want you to I cannot afford to have an icon get sick on my watch. So we just want to set this up for you to talk, really. Because I think the more that people I think if America got your spiritual business plan and your literal business plan, and we exported what you do inside of the Potter's House, et cetera, into every nonprofit organization, into for-profit corporations, into our government, we could solve 2/3 of the problems that ail us at scale. Bishop, over to you.
First of all, you all make me sound better than I really am. Thank you, Lisa, for that generous introduction. And my dear friend John, I'm deeply honored and grateful to be with you today and to add whatever I can as a way of contribution to the conversation. I think, first of all, where I would like to start in discussion is that we are currently existing in an atmosphere of disruption, total disruption in every level of life, either because of COVID-19 or because of political challenges or racial challenges. Our country is in the deepest disruption that I have seen, certainly since the 60s, and perhaps even worse than the 60s, because we didn't have a pandemic coexisting at the same time that we had demonstrations. That's not bad news. That's really good news. Because when we ask for change, the answer is always disruption. You can't have change and not have disruption. And so the first thing I would like to say to everybody listening is just calm down. This disruption is an opportunity for change,
Well said.
for upward mobility, for innovation, for rethinking ourselves, our country, our police departments, our criminal justice system, our technology and our involvement in technology, the culture of people of color, moving them from consumers to investors and from consumers to producers. We have to become less concerned about watching movies and become more concerned about making movies, less concerned about buying technology and more concerned about creating technology. We need to, in the disruption, is an opportunity to switch roles. And that's where I think we join the conversation. The uniqueness of me being a person of faith and a faith leader sitting at the table that I've been able to sit at has been shocking for a lot of business people. Historically, business people have not talked to people of faith, especially faith leaders. Elected officials do, particularly during campaigns, but CEOs have not done so. But what we have that is very, very important is a trusted voice in the community.
Sure.
You can build all the answers you want, but if you cannot build trust, and there's a reason that we put money in trust, because people invest in what they trust. We buy from whom we trust. We use who we trust. So my conviction is building a four-pronged approach to lifting the community, which is my goal, which is my commitment, which is the focus, as the legacy of my life, is to see underserved communities brought up to liquidity and equality and equity that is necessary to promote the strength that we need so that we can sit at the table from a position of strength. Because everybody who sits at the table doesn't sit in the same size chair.
Bishop, let me jump in here for just a second, Bishop, not to cut you off, but I want to unpack that just a little bit, because you started Potter's House 20 years after you preached your first sermon, and you started it with minimal resources. And I hear lots of our people, but people in general, talking about what they don't have and what they are losing, as opposed to an opportunity and let's pivot. Can you unpack that a little bit and talk about what enabled you to stay focused on moving forward in the face of the adversity that was bopping you in the nose every day?
First, let me back it up just a little bit and say I have several companies. I have for-profit companies and I have not-for-profit companies. The Potter's House is, of course, a 501c3. TD Jakes Enterprises is my for-profit company, and it is interesting to understand that my for-profit company preceded my ministry.
Okay.
So my for-profit company existed when I was in West Virginia. It was founded many years before I ever came to Dallas. And so it is actually older. TD Jakes Enterprises is much older than the Potter's House.
Understood.
And in both cases, whether for-profit or not-for-profit, whether you're doing a startup business or whether you're doing a startup church, the entrepreneurial principles are very, very similar. Yes, the passion is preaching, but the reality is the mortgage. So you have to.
Weren't we talking about economics earlier? If you don't have the money, you can't pay for anything. It doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, the gospel is free. It's like water. The water is free, but the pipes cost you.
Right.
And in order to get a building, in order to hire staff, we currently have 300 people on staff. In order to be able to engage television and technology and all the mediums of influence that we have and have the expertise to be able to execute it in a spirit of excellence, you have to have payroll, which means life insurance, health insurance, human resources, public relations, accounting, all kinds of things, IRS compliance, all kinds of things are involved in it. IT is a critical part of it. And we started with absolutely nothing. So I consider myself very much a bootstrap person, both on the for-profit and the not-for-profit side. The for-profit side was gospel plays, bringing them to film. We won the Santa Barbara Film Festival.
Wow.
We started doing things on screen. We did $500 million worth of business on television and movies through our for-profit entities. And we started with literally nothing.
Wait, Bishop, 500
500
billion
million.
with a B?
Yeah, and he also has a real estate. He has
I
a real
love
estate group that he's got. But I also want to make this clear to everybody watching, and I have the same obsession. There's a firewall up with audited financials of the nonprofit.
Right.
In his case, is faith. Mine is a nonprofit. Audited financials, bulletproof audited financials. My financials are some of the best in the whole sector. Four-star rating with Charity Navigator, because people are not going to give me the benefit of the doubt. Neither him, neither you. In fact, they're trying to target us. So the nonprofit has this clear transparency. The nonprofit cannot benefit the for-profit. The for-profit can benefit the nonprofit, not the other way around. He's kept this thing. Again, it's best in class. And he doesn't need to bleed on one to lead the other. He is the brand.
Right.
And in order to do good, he's got to do well first.
That's why I wanted him to unpack it. I didn't want anybody to take that for granted.
Yeah,
so
he and
thank
my
you,
wife
John.
were also born in the same town in West Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Bishop, so it's the business plan is what I think what Lisa was getting to is the business plan. What has been, if I got this right, Lisa, your business plan?
I want to go deeper than that. It's the business mentality. Before the plan has to be the business mentality. I grew up in the house with a father who started a business with a mop and a bucket and ended up with 52 employees back in the 60s.
Okay.
So growing up in an environment where people think business is a critical part of the conversation. Many of our underserved communities are not in the conversation or in the room to get the mentality. So you can develop the plan all you want to, but if you don't have the mindset to think with a business mentality, you have a plan that you can't execute because you don't think like that. How do I get the mentality? You have to hang around people who have the mentality. Mentalities are contagious.
I love it.
You can become infected if you change hanging around people that you have to feed and start hanging around people that are feeding you. You develop the mentality and the expertise to be able to function at a higher level of reasoning. Having said that, there has to be strong distinctions, not only between the for-profits and not-for-profits, but I also have, as you alluded to, the TD Jakes real estate ventures, by which we buy real estate, property, community development, build homes, both in terms of retail and multifamily, as well as single-family dwelling places for acquisition and opportunities to stop the regentrification of neighborhoods by building attainable and affordable homes that you are going to get financed, as the previous speaker spoke about. We don't do the financing, but we do the community development. All of these have to be insulated walls of business with their own accounting, their own systems, their own expertise. And you have to be able to execute them from the top. And what I mean by that is you have to have everybody reporting back to you through these different ventricles in a way that you understand the distinctives between what is required. For instance, if you have a 501c3 that's not a church, you have to file a 990.
Right.
If it is a church, you don't have to file a 990. Understanding the nuances of each business is important. To somebody who hears that and says, oh my God, that sounds like I've got to go back to college for life, not necessarily. It's not that difficult. What you do have to do is be willing to sit at the table and ask questions.
That's right.
And educate yourself in the moment. You can educate yourself in the moment. If you don't sit down at the table trying to prove to everybody that you deserve to be at the table and come to the table from a perspective of both trying to integrate into a new culture, but also trying to educate yourself as to how things operate. Because the books say one thing, but real business operates another way.
Right. That's right.
So what you learned in college may not necessarily prepare you to sit at the board table to make the decisions you need to make. It will help you to read the ledgers. It'll help you to understand what's red line. It'll help you to understand the bottom line and all of that, but it may not help you to understand the culture through which things operate. So what we want is a business mentality. Number two, we want a business plan. Number three, we have to be able to finance that business plan. And this is generally where we get hung up.
Yeah.
Sure.
Access to capital is a huge problem.
Yeah.
But because I grew up in the 60s where my father raised his own capital because he could not get loans and things like that, he had to scrap and save and build and bootstrap his way up. I did not enter into the business world expecting a lot of help.
You and me either.
I built my resources up until they started coming to me rather than me coming to them.
That's right.
So in order to do that, when you have nothing and you don't have any rich uncles to die and hand you a lot of money and a lot of resources, you have to have what is called delayed gratification.
Yeah.
One of the problems that stops us from being successful is that we want to look successful rather than be successful.
That's a drop the mic
He's
moment.
talking now.
You done started preaching.
It's busyness, not business.
Yeah.
When your outflow sees your inflow, then your overhead will be your downfall.
Right.
Absolutely. You only got two doors in business, income and outflow. And
Right.
if you control those two doors, you can run anything.
That's
It's
right.
just two doors.
Right.
What's coming in and what's going out. And you either have to increase one and diminish the other in order to create the profit margin that exists between the two.
That's right.
I mean, it's really simple.
It is.
It's, no matter how big the room is, it's only got two doors. And once you understand that,
Break it down, Bishop. Break it down.
I can get it where you can understand it. And you need to have gatekeepers at each door
Right.
that are trusted gatekeepers that are accountable back to you.
That's right.
So they can do it. Our problem when we go into business as entrepreneurs, we can do the work. Grandma can fry the chicken, but she can't keep the books.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
So you open up Nanny's Chicken Shack, okay?
Right.
And Nanny's in the kitchen.
Right.
And if Nanny's in the kitchen, the chicken may be great, but the business may go to hell.
That's right.
You don't necessarily need to be able to fry chicken to open up Nanny's Chicken Shack. You can hire a nanny. What you need to be able to do is watch those two doors.
That's right.
If you watch those two doors, let Nanny watch the chicken,
Yeah.
and we can run the business. Most entrepreneurs are so busy producing the product or loving what they do. They're an artist, they love the music, or they're an actor and they love to entertain, but they don't love to do the business.
That's right.
You have to love to control the two doors in order to be successful.
96%, Bishop, of all black businesses don't have an employee. 96%, which means that it's busyness, not business. It's a self-employment project. I got this contract. I used to work at the city of Whoozy What's for do graphic artists, and I'm gonna sit there and do the graphic artist work until the contract runs out. The person who hired me retired. I can't get another contract. I didn't build any wealth. I didn't save anything. I was living from hand to mouth. When your outflow sees your inflow, then your overhead will be your downfall. Now you're broke and you're poor, and you built there's no generational wealth to pass down. It's just generational debt, and that ready fire, and then we get emotional about business, which is even worse.
Right.
So it's busyness. It's not business. We're brilliant, but it's what we don't know that we don't know that's killing us. But we think we know, and God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we listen twice as much as we talk. That's why when I call Bishop, it's really funny. He calls me sometimes. Who asks me a question? Hey, John, I don't know this. What do you think? I'll call him more times than he calls me and ask him a question. And you got to have enough humility to acknowledge, I don't know this stuff.
Yeah, our relationship is an opportunity. In fact, relationships are your greatest resource.
Right.
You can get money if you have great relationships.
That's right.
Relationships are your greatest resource. And until you value relationships and don't allow people to destroy your relationships, I don't care how much money you have, if you don't have those relationships and protect those relationships at all costs, they become your greatest resource because everybody you know knows somebody you need to know.
I call it relationship capital. That was my last book memo. Yep.
Understood completely.
And, Lisa, we know each other because of relationship. This is our relationship capital. We met each other. We valued each other. We didn't let that relationship get distorted, taken advantage of, pimped, manipulated. We made sure that when there was an misunderstanding, potential one, we called each other, communicated.
Clear the
when
air.
you were down, you called me. When I was down, I called you. Same thing with Bishop. That built trust. It built that And in many ways, a lot of things going on here is because of our mutual relationships. It wasn't somebody putting it in a resume. We trust him. We knew him. Hey, Lisa, I need this. What do you think? Right. That's how the world works. Isn't that right, Bishop?
That's exactly how the world works. And it's relationships externally and internally. You have to be relationally proficient in order to organize an organization. You talked about people who don't hire anybody. You have to understand it's not just about sharing wealth with them. It is also about valuing you so that you are not being used for anything less than your highest and best use. Great leadership works itself out of a job.
Right.
So what that's great
Spot
leadership
on.
at its best.
That's right.
So it's not that you can't afford to hire anybody, it's that you can't afford not to.
Ooh.
You can't afford not to. If you don't hire somebody to do what you can be replaced from doing, that means you have a vacancy in the area of somebody who is thinking the business, not doing the business.
Right.
So the best people you can have around you are people who are paid to think, not to perform. And in most cases, that's going to be you at first.
Yeah.
So in order for you to think your business through, you have to get your hands free from doing your business.
That's right.
Yeah, you got to have some help. He who makes his living with his own two hands will never have much because you have already limited your productivity down to two.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If you had 8 hands, you could multiply. Let me go biblical on you for a minute.
Yeah.
One of the great commands in the scriptures is to be fruitful, multiply, replenish, and subdue. It's the first command that God gave. In order to be fruitful, you must be seedful. Find out what you have that the seed, the potential, and that you can bring to fruition. And once you bring it to fruition, then you want to multiply it. In business terms, that's franchising.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay, multiplication of what is working in your life is franchising.
Yeah.
So once you find something that works, you want to multiply it. And that's where the fear comes in. Because once we get something that works, we're so glad after years of oppression and years of being let down, we're so excited that we hold on to it. We won't let anybody near it and we smother it to death.
Yeah.
We asphyxiate the future holding it too tightly.
Well, not only that, Bishop, you got your hand closed, you can't receive your next blessing.
Absolutely. Now you preaching.
Well, and
I got a good teacher here.
And I'd rather have 10% of something than 100% of nothing. But you can't have 10% of something unless you're willing to dilute or share that equity with others as you grow. Or he calls it franchising. I'm going to say something now. We're over time, by the way, but we're wrapping up. This is the last segment. This, I'm sure you watched it, think this is important enough. We're going to be over time. And I want to thank Comcast, by the way, Xfinity, NBC for their use of their beautiful headquarters here in Atlanta at no cost to us. So for everybody paying your Comcast bill, you just helped us out indirectly. Please pay your Comcast bill. But this is such an important conversation. I want to continue it a little bit, and we'll wrap it up. So as I'm listening to Bishop's story, I'm thinking about my story, Lisa. I'm thinking about your story. I didn't have any. I've never said this before. I deal with all these banks. Listen to me now. I've never gotten a bank loan to start any of my businesses. I've never got a bank loan to operate any of my businesses. I use the compounded hustle of my being able to sell my vision into the next purchaser, because I know when I sell that, that's profit. I don't have to go and the worst thing you can do is build try to use long-term equity with short-term debt, because the debt has a payment on it every month. You may not get the sale every month. That's stressful. That puts you in survival mode I talked about earlier versus thriving and winning mode. I want to be free to be. So people don't believe, I got all these banks around me. I don't want nothing from none of them. In fact, I want them to give me money when I can prove I don't need it. That's the best kind of money. That's cheap money. So, real quick point, Bishop, I want you to pivot on this.
Let me jump, just before you say that,
go
let
ahead.
me jump in.
Go ahead.
Because I don't want our community to sleep on opportunity zones. Opportunity zones create opportunities for real estate investments in particular zones in cities and communities
that have been
where
depressed.
getting the money It's the least of your trouble.
Right.
It's going to be the least of your problems because the investor sees the opportunity zone as a tax shelter for their investment, and it's a tax advantage for them to put money into it.
That's right.
We are asleep at the wheel at this opportunity, and they are in our communities. These opportunity zones, you can get investors to invest in them. If you have a good plan and a good business plan, they will invest into those communities because it is a tax shelter that beats any other shelter for the investor to become involved in. And it is designed to rehabilitate the community. Right. If we don't get a hold to these opportunity zones and maximize them, through non-traditional loans, you don't necessarily have to go through the bank at all.
Right.
You can get investment into those communities by getting control of those properties. Getting control of those properties brings investment into that cash-infused investments into that community that is a benefit to the billionaires and millionaires because they don't have to pay capital gains on it.
That's right.
If they keep it in there 10 years or more, the capital gains is lowered or non-existent altogether. So you have the capital to rehabilitate the community and start going forward. By the time we hear about opportunities, they're gone.
They're gone.
Right.
And it leads to the regentrification of the community because we're not hearing those sorts of things. I just wanted to throw that in. I knew we were out of town. You can dig it up, you can look it up, you can study it up and research it. But they're talking about our community.
That's right.
And we
Right
have to get right now, seizing that opportunity is very important. And if you can't do it on a big scale, you can get one house.
That's right.
And flip that one house in that one community. It's an opportunity zone. The money you put into that house can be deferred as it relates to capital gains. You can rent it out. You can start. My mother started doing real estate one house at a time. She ended up owning every street, every house on our street, and several at other places. In fact, by the time my mother died with Alzheimer's, she had money coming in she couldn't even remember.
That's right.
Wow. Wow.
So you don't have to be, and we did not come from wealth.
West Virginia. Yeah.
We came from government cheese and powdered milk and powdered eggs and chickens in the backyard, okay? We did not come from wealth. Do not allow where you came from to determine where you're going.
Yeah. You didn't come from wealth, but you came from wit. You know, this has been some strong insights and strong perspectives today, Bishop, and we are so grateful for the work that you have done and that you continue to do and the wisdom that you continue to share. So thank you so very much for being with us.
I'm so honored.
I'm going to wrap this up now, but I want the audience, and I hope they replay this, share this with your friends, take this link, share it all around. You need to watch this 10 times. He gave you some jewels today. Or as Jay-Z said on his album 444, I'm going to give you $1 million worth of financial literacy wisdom for $9.99. He just gave you, and this didn't cost you $9.99, it cost you nothing because our sponsors paid for it. You got to replay and listen to what Bishop said. This was a blessing today.
Welcome back, everybody. We're so delighted that you are still with us here today. We hope you are enjoying the annual meeting and learning a lot. Let me set up this next session for you. We are going to be speaking with our good friend Harley, Finkelstein. He shares our passion for helping entrepreneurs succeed. He founded his first company at 17 while still a student at McGill. He is currently starring on Discovery's I Quit, a series about hopeful entrepreneurs who decide to quit their jobs to focus on their side hustle. He's an entrepreneur, a lawyer, and president of Shopify, now the second largest online retailer in the United States. Please welcome our friend Harley Finkelstein, who will be joined by our fearless leader, founder, chairman, and CEO, John Hope Bryant. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. And hello, Harley, for the second time this morning.
Hey, John.
We're making.
How you doing, John?
I'm good, man. I want one clarity. I believe Shopify is the second largest e-retailer in the world. Is that right?
I definitely know that we are the second largest in the U.S., but here's the interesting part about that. We actually are not a retailer. And that is something that I think gets missed It was something that gets missed often. If you were to pretend Shopify was a retailer, we'd be the second largest retailer in America after Amazon.
Yeah.
But we're not. We're actually a platform. So what we do instead of keeping economies of scale for ourselves is we distribute those economies of scale. So every single small business that uses Shopify gets the same payment rates, fulfillment rates, rates on things like shipping, capital rates that the biggest companies get. We're able to give it to small businesses, which is one of the most meaningful things we do.
Yeah, it's like you're the backbone for e-commerce, the backbone for retailers, the backbone for those who want to do digital commerce. You're their infrastructure, their piping, their efficiency. At scale.
Yeah, we're the brand behind the brand for your favorite brands. If you're buying things off Allbirds or Bombas or Gymshark or any of these great direct-to-consumer brands, we have more than 1 million of them on Shopify. Shopify powers them, and it's a role that we take very seriously in empowering entrepreneurs.
Yeah, the only thing I'm happy for your success. The only thing I'm jealous of and I'm hating on you on is how you get to dress.
And we talked about that, right? We talked
hoodie.
about the fact that, the hoodie. I'm going to send you some hoodies, but we've talked about that it is a privilege that I get to wear this hoodie. That I don't have to think about it. That I can just show up in a T-shirt or a hoodie, and that, in many of our conversations, our late night calls, that's something you and I have talked about. That wasn't something you felt you could do. Yeah,
if you're the average black man, and you wear a hoodie or a T-shirt, you get looked down at by the average white man. You get looked strangely. Maybe the Caucasian female, maybe she holds her purse a little tighter. It's not yet that freedom that you enjoy. We're getting there. We're going to get there together by using economic growth and economic opportunity and entrepreneurship as a gateway to social justice. And a leveling of the playing field, so that everybody can go from wearing a T-shirt to wearing a suit to, if they so see fit, be they black,
back
white,
to the T-shirt.
Back to the T-shirt. That's right.
That's right.
And Dr. King, we have a special announcement to make here in a second. We had this conversation. Dr. King had a brilliant sense of humor. He was a practical jokester. But he didn't feel like he could not, he couldn't feel like he could joke in public. He didn't feel like he could wear his sunglasses in public. He felt like he had to be serious all the time, otherwise somebody would discount him. Because the whole brand at that time, the whole movement rested on his shoulders. And he couldn't offload it, Harley. He couldn't distribute it. He couldn't platform it. And what's beautiful about what you and I are going to announce today is this allows for the platforming, the institutionalization, the scaling of human dignity through opportunity for all. I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to allow you to tell the world what we're about to do together.
Okay, so let's set the stage first and foremost. John, I didn't mention that I was going to talk about this, but I do want to mention it. One thing that I've noticed is you and I communicate a lot now, and I get these great emails from you. And at the bottom of your email signature, there's one single identifiable brand, one thing that you self-identify with. It says John Hope Bryant, entrepreneur. And I've been thinking a lot about, you can call there's so many different things that you can say you are, whether it's on the philanthropy side, or it's a business owner, or it's a banker, or it's a community builder, but you wrote entrepreneur. And I think that is something that you've held close for a very, very long time. Yeah. We at Shopify, the entire mission of the company exists to level the playing field, to make it easier for entrepreneurs to start and to scale businesses. But something else that you and I have talked about is that something like 9.5% of all businesses in America are ran by black entrepreneurs and black small business owners. That is a disproportionate amount. That doesn't make sense. And so what we are announcing today is that Operation Hope, along with Shopify, is creating a new program, which we think it's called 1MBB, so 1 million new black business and entrepreneurs. And Shopify is helping to advance that mission by offering $130 million worth of resources. And the goal is to create...
No, slow down, Harley. Only rich and wealthy and brilliantly smart people who are cool and who wear hoodies as a daily uniform walk right past $130 million. Slow it down. come back, say that again, and say it louder for those in the back of the room. Pause. Let's roll that tape back.
So we are getting together, Shopify, along with Operation Hope, to create one MBB. Once again, Hope, 1 million new Black businesses and entrepreneurs initiative. And Shopify, for our side of it, in order to advance that mission, again, we are offering up to $130 million of resources. I'll pause there.
Yes. Drop the mic. I am just bursting at the seams. We've been keeping this quiet for a few months now. For those watching who haven't fallen out of their chairs just yet, that was not a hiccup. He didn't cough and add a number. Shopify is committing $130 million over 10 years in resource support to partner with Operation Hope, to lean into this social justice moment, to rectify, to right, to level the playing field for Black people in this country who helped to make this country who she is today and got nothing for it. To inject social justice through opportunity for all and healing the nation at a time of reset, through the word entrepreneur, which goes back to my fundamental grounding, to the word small, the phrase small business, which was my father and my grandfather, who in 1871, when he was born, was probably born into illegal slavery. And he did not those that came before us don't have this opportunity, but we must make sure we give others opportunity. And because of the scale and the sophistication and the elegance and the efficiency of the Shopify platform here and around the world, we're going to be able to, over 10 years, work together to stand up 1 million new Black businesses and Black entrepreneurs. The Hope 1 Million Black Business and Black Entrepreneurship Initiative, or 1MBB for short. The website is up, the press release is out, the commitment has been made, and the work now begins. This hopefully is a role modeling, Harley, for others. Hopefully this is an inspiration for others. Hopefully people take the words can't and impossible now out of their dictionary and try to figure out what they can do to be the change they want to see in the world. And I want to personally thank you, your founder and your partner and friend, Toby, the other Toby Shannon there, and all of the heroes and sheroes that make up, Rebecca, all the people who are behind the scenes there at Shopify, who have really been incredible with this entire experience. And you've just been ratcheting it up. This started with you guys committing to do 10% to support 10% of the 1 million Black businesses, 100,000, which is still is incredible.
Big number.
And now you said you want to commit to support all 1 million by giving them platform support so they could step into this new reality. Thank you very, very much.
It's our pleasure. We think that a world with more entrepreneurs, with more diverse entrepreneurs, is a better world. And going back to that hoodie conversation, that T-shirt conversation, I had role models in my life when I was a kid. My grandparents were immigrants and came to Canada in '56. My grandfather started as an entrepreneur, a small business owner, and so I had role models that allowed me to think about the idea of becoming an entrepreneur. So we don't just want to create 1 million entrepreneurs. That in itself is a big deal. Yeah. But if every one of those entrepreneurs also becomes a role model for the next generation, the next cohort of entrepreneurs in the Black community, now we're talking about an entire movement. Another thing that we talked about, I mentioned your email signature, the self-identifying as entrepreneur yourself. The moment that someone pushes that launch button on Shopify and they become a small business owner, they become an entrepreneur at that moment, everything changes. Yeah. Confidence changes. Yeah. Self-identity changes. Their audacity to do incredible things changes. And I can't think of a better place, a better way for us to spend our time and our money than partnering with Operation Hope to create this entire program. And it's been a great honor, not just helping to architect it with you, John, but to learn from you over the last couple of months of what is needed in the Black community. And I think this is going to have an outsized impact. And Shopify and all 6,000 or 7,000 of us that work at Shopify, we are behind those million entrepreneurs that are going to get started on the platform. And it's very exciting for us.
Yeah, and I was particularly touched. I'm just trying to keep it together here. I was particularly touched by the Black and brown employees at Shopify who I'm told want to volunteer now as a bit of a coaching network behind the scenes at Shopify to coach up these new entrepreneurs and small business owners as they come online to help to, no one can guarantee success, but to try to make sure that playing field is as level as possible, to make sure they know they're not alone, right? And 96%, you mentioned earlier that 9% of Black business, of all businesses in America are Black businesses, but 96% of those businesses, Harley, don't have an employee. Right. They're a sole proprietor. So is it business or is it busyness? Is it really self-employment project? Is there any generational wealth accumulated there? Is there any infrastructure? How are the books and records? They couldn't get PPP, the federal government program. They had no employees. They couldn't efficiently get the Treasury and stimulus money because the books and records might not have been tight. Maybe they couldn't call the banker because they thought the banker was a bank teller. They didn't know you had to have a banking relationship. We are brilliant, man. When the playing field is level and the rules are published, we just saw Grant Hill and his father a moment ago. We've killed it in sports because the playing field is level and the rules are published. We've killed it in the arts. T.I. will be on later today. Killer Mike is doing great. We've killed it because the playing field is level and the rules are published. But in free enterprise and entrepreneurship, that's not necessarily the case. It hasn't been the case. And so it's what we don't know that we don't know that's killing us. But we think we know, and we're just doing the best we can with what we've got. What would happen if a nonprofit at scale and a for-profit at scale got together, I don't know, maybe Operation Hope and Shopify, and laddered up and had financial coaching and counseling, Hope Business in a Box, entrepreneurship and small business training, 700 credit score counseling, business plan development, graduation, accomplishments, you said, that resiliency, that sense of dignity you get. Okay, I got to this point. Now they go into the Shopify platform. Okay, domain name, thanks to you, free. Website, thanks to you, free. Payment system, thanks to you at no cost. E-store front, thanks to you, support and assistance. I've already said payment system, fulfillment systems, help assistance with delivery of their products. And when they make their first sale, they get a credit line.
That's right. The moment we see any traction, any sales, what we're able to do is then evaluate them if we can give them cash advances or loans. We've already given out more than $1 billion of cash advances and loans to small businesses that otherwise would not be able to walk into a traditional bank and receive those. And we can do that. One of the things we talked about early on in our discussion was this idea, a new system for confidence, credit, capital. Entrepreneurship is the basis for it. And so the way that we want to show up at Shopify is not just providing these great tools and this great platform which to actually build a business. But along the way, through the people that work at Shopify, the team, we want to help. We want to be able to coach and be able to mentor and advise and say, your next step is cross-sell on Instagram. Your next step is to activate a new shipping provider to get better discounts. Your next step is to open a brick and mortar store in your city. And we're going to provide you with physical location software as well. This idea that we may create the next big brands in these spaces, but for different people, success is a different definition. For some people, they just may want independence. They want to be able to quit their job and focus on something that they love, find their life's work. For others, they want to build the next big company, and they can do all of that because of what we're doing with Operation Hope, and I can't think of anything more meaningful than that.
Somewhere within this platform, Harley, over the next 10 years, we're going to find the next Bill Gates or the next Steve Jobs or the next, Oprah Winfrey or Jay-Z for business. We're going to find the next big personality who can scale opportunity. That alone is worth it. But to your point earlier, and then we'll get into, I want to pivot to some of the knock-on effects of what we're doing that's happened already. the psyche, the mental resiliency that's going to come from this, Harley. Maybe the business will succeed, maybe it won't. Who knows? Maybe they'll go on to become an entrepreneur or not. But now you're affecting how people think about themselves. Now you know you can. As my nephew Mason Dalton said to me when I told him about this, people in his generation at 20 years old are going to go, young black men, from, John, how did you do it? Like you're a Martian. How did you become an entrepreneur? To why am I not doing it? That's a real big leap. Why am I not doing it? Well, that is confidence. That's going from a surviving mentality to a winning mentality overnight. And you do that and you transform a generation, maybe generations, because now they know they can at scale. And they know they can not just cash a check, they can write one too. The knock-on effects, Harley, of us doing Squawk Box this morning, I want to thank CNBC Squawk Box for leading with us this morning and this announcement today, is we've already gotten 100 Black Men of America, the largest collection of black male mentors in this country. 40% of their members are business owners who said, we're going to mentor these businesses that you've brought on. Boom. We've already gotten one of the largest accounting firms here in Atlanta, Apria, who said, we'll give you, I think it's 6,000 hours. It's 50 hours a month for 10 years. It's like a $2 million commitment of time. We're going to wrap accounting support around these new business owners. We have law firms calling us. We have a big business management firm that's called us. Somebody before this we got on, I didn't even know about it, they're committing some in-kind hours. You're creating a juggernaut that other folks can latch. A movement. There you go.
Yeah, you're creating a movement. And what you're seeing is what we're doing and what Operation Hope is doing with this program is we're figuring out what are all the pain points that any entrepreneur might have, whether it's mentorship, technology, accounting services, legal services, whatever that may be in the way of becoming a successful entrepreneur. And we're simply just weighting it down. We're bringing it right down as flat as possible. And we're doing that together because we're able to bring all these different people together all around this mission. In the intro earlier, they mentioned that I just finished wrapping this show on Discovery Channel. It's called I Quit. And the winner of I Quit, which thank you, was a guy named Mike D, and he's in Durham, North Carolina. At the end of the show, Mike D has built this incredible barbecue sauce company. At the end of the show, I asked Mike very simply, why did you decide to become an entrepreneur? He didn't say money. He didn't say fame. He didn't say because he just loved to barbecue sauce. He said because he would be the first person in his community that ever would have a family business for their children to go into.
Yes.
And that was mind-blowing to me because what a reason to start something.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, his daughters now have a totally different version of what their future may look like. They may not want to go into the barbecue business, but they have that optionality.
They know they can.
Starting this business for him, and they know they can, right? And if they don't want to, they don't have to. But that's what we're trying to do here. If we can create 1 million more Mike D's, some bigger, some smaller, oh my gosh, that would be incredible.
Yes, and we're not going to guarantee success. That's not what this is about. We're going to guarantee you that we're going to try as hard as we can to lower those barriers of on-ramp to your own self-determination. But you can't self-determine yourself unless you understand the game, how it works, and you get an on-ramp, and somebody opens a door for you. And if you hustle and work hard, then nobody should be able to stop you, whoever you happen to be. So this should be encouraging to you. This is going to ladder you all the way up from training to support to literally starting the business at no cost to you, to wraparound services of professional advisors. And who knows? I don't want to riff here, but I think that a lot of other people will be inspired to say what other gaps exist. And now it's just on you. It's on you to say, do you want to do this? Do you believe you can do this? Because a winner knew they were a winner before they won anything. And I think we have a whole generation of winners who've just never been given a shot.
And the cost of failure is now about as close to zero as it's ever been in the history of the world. To start a business 10, 20, 100 years ago cost a lot of money. You mortgage your house if you even could do that.
Yeah.
Now the cost of failure is trending towards zero. You know, you mentioned something about role models last time we spoke, and I don't remember the exact stat, but you said that that there's with enough
5%.
role models, I think it's like 5% of a cohort to influence the 95%?
With 5% of role models, any community stabilizes. That's University of Illinois study, Malcolm Gladwell, it's from book The Tipping Point, I believe. At 5% of role models, every community stabilizes. Not 80% role models, not 50%, not 20. That's tough. Just 5.
Just
and the
5.
tail wags the dog because people recognize hope and they are addicted to it. And now if you're wearing a suit, everybody wants to wear a suit. We got to, if you want to wear, we'll make hoodies smart, sexy, and cool again. But the point is that we got to make smart, sexy again in this country. This is not about black people. This is about, this is everybody is dumbed down. They've dumbed down in the world and they celebrated it. And we got to knock it off. We've got to make smart, sexy again. This is making smart, sexy at scale. This is betting on the right jockeys, betting on the right believers, but that all legitimate wealth came from the poor, came from the least of these God's children. That Walmart was Sam Walton with a pickup truck, a storefront, and a high school education. That every big company was once a small one. Why aren't we betting on the least? Why aren't we betting on the underdog? That's who's going to build the next big Shopify. And so let me say 2 last things. I'll give you the last point. We're a little bit over on time, but I think everybody would recognize this is $130 million from Shopify is probably worth it. And then Operation Hope is adding some on there to it, and they're supporting us, by the way, with this platform. And they aren't being egotistical about it. They're our founding signature partner in this, but they've invited others to come and join for freedom. I just love the spirit. Number 1 point, if you think if the government had done this, and we want the government in 2021, whoever is president, to be challenged to do this at scale maybe. But if the government had written this check, it's easily 20x what the commitment we're making today. This is at least easily $25,000 per business if you add up all that we're providing times 1 million businesses. It's a lot of money. It's, pick a number. 10 billion, 15 billion, 20 billion, $25 billion easy if you did this at the federal government level. This is the efficiency of a nonprofit and a efficient for-profit enterprise working together to do something smart at scale. This is capitalism for good, really. I hope that this, and by the way, so this pivots to my last point. I'm thankful to Governor Gina Raimondo of Rhode Island, who's making a state commitment to 1MBB. In other words, she's going to commit the whole state to this, to carving into this number of 1 million small businesses. We have Mayor Strickland of Memphis, who's making a city commitment for the entire city of Memphis, Tennessee. We've got bankers like First Horizon Bank. Brian Jordan's committing bankers to the Time Bank. We've got the CEO of Aprio doing accounting work. We have 100 black men, Tommy Dortch. We've got, this is just the, iHeartRadio is giving $2 million of radio spots to get the word out. I'm just seeing a layering effect here. And I want to end by thanking both you and your partner in crime, your partner in doing good. Let's get caught doing good, Toby. And I want to thank him. Please tell him I said thank you for checking his spam folder, because when he and I did a podcast, and he said, John, what can we do? And I think you walked out of the room. And what can we do? And I said, well, I don't know. Let's start 1 million black businesses. And he said, send me a note. People say it all the time, right? So I wrote a note.
You follow up.
I sent it. Hey, look, Harley, crickets. I heard nothing for a week. I said, well, that didn't work. And I went on about my business, right? And so I get an email about 10 days later. Oops, I'm sorry, this went to my spam folder. Of course we're in. You and him responded with absolute commitment. I just want to encourage everybody out there to check your spam folder. It might be magic there.
Well, look, we have to open more doors. We have to provide access. We have to remove the barriers for entrepreneurship. This is not just done through software. This is done through resources, through educational programs, and the opportunity to access capital. And I think our shared values and our vision with Operation Hope for 1MBB, like this is going to help us succeed in empowering and inspiring black entrepreneurs. And can you imagine we get to 1 million, then we decide to go to 2 million entrepreneurs, and it would be wonderful. And so we are engaged. You have the entirety of Shopify at your back and behind you, and blowing wind in your sails. And we want to create 1 million black entrepreneurs, and I think we can do it together.
Let's go. Thank you for your leadership, Harley, and for your vision and for your commitment. You're as smart and committed and authentic as you are cool. Peace and light.
Oh, thank you. Let's go, John.
Let's go. Hi, this is John Hope Bryant, founder of Operation Hope. Welcome to the Hope Global Forum annual meeting 2020. Reset of America, healing a nation, opportunity for all. Before we get to my friend Doug McMillion, I want to just thank Ambassador Andrew Young. You saw a short outtake of probably the most incredible 2.5-hour session I've had with him, and in the entire time I've been with him. He's here with us here at the forum. You'll get a chance to see him later at the close. But that's an American icon. I mean, he's the last living lieutenant of Dr. King in the world, and the only mayor mentored by Dr. King. He's just an icon. He's the closest thing we have to Nelson Mandela, and it puts chills down my spine every time I talk to him. And if I move, if I want to go move from my right brain, Ambassador Young, to my left brain, it'll put chills down my spine and talk about Doug McMillion. That should shock you. There's a lot of people I admire, and he doesn't know I'm going to say this, but the son of Laura and Morris. Morris McMillion went to Vietnam and was a dentist. I believe they grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and then moved from Memphis, I think, to Bentonville. There's so many. We don't even have time for this conversation. We're going to have to break this into pieces. But like when Ambassador Young says the coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous, this is Doug's life. He's CEO, yes, let me get this out of the way, Chief Executive Officer of the largest retailer in the world. I believe they're number one on the Fortune 500 list. The largest employer of black people in the world. Who started Walmart not as a C-suite later, not recruited from an Ivy League university, started as a summer associate, or as an associate. And so he moved, again, this is magic. He moved, it's magic, but it also it's instructive. Moved from, I believe, Memphis, Tennessee, at some point got to Bentonville, Arkansas, where he got the internship. Got the associate job. So zip codes matter, orientation matters, culture matters. I mentioned in my last book that if Steve Jobs was adopted from a family on the south side of Detroit, a single parent household, and not adopted by the Jobs family in Silicon Valley, we may not have it. We wouldn't have Apple, I don't believe. You wouldn't have an iPad. You wouldn't have iPhones. You wouldn't have a lot of the technology we have today. If Laura and Morris hadn't brought Doug to Bentonville, and then he hadn't got that summer job, and then that led to a position at Sam's Club and other roles, and him coming up the roles and having people see him for all his potential, you would not have, in my opinion, one of the most enlightened CEOs in the world. Welcome, Doug McMillion.
John, don't set that bar too high.
No, I'm going to set it very high for you. I'm going to start. I'm going to start out. And by the way, probably your best quality is your wife. Please tell her I said hello.
That's for sure.
Behind every successful man is an exhausted woman. You lead this company. You could be disconnected, you could be arrogant, you could be obnoxious, you could be important, whatever that means. You decide to be human instead. You decide to take the mission seriously and not so much yourself. You're always being encouraging and looking for opportunities. And I'm going to tell a quick story, and then I want to say why I hold you in such high regard and hold you to such a high standard, and then we'll open up this conversation. I want every minute to count, so I want you to talk, not me. But context matters. When we first met, you asked me, are you doing anything with Walmart? I don't know if you remember that. And I said, no, not really. I didn't ask you for anything. I didn't want anything from you. I just thought you were a nice guy. But you were curious. Was everybody getting opportunity? I mean, are you being treated well by our corporation? Have you been whatever it is you're doing? Are you getting a fair shot? That was subtle, but it was important for the CEO to say that. I couldn't walk through that door, but I didn't. I thought there was a larger conversation that we needed to have about everybody else. And as we began to talk and get to know each other, magic would happen in different conversations. You asked me one time, would I join a diversity and inclusion, racial equity conversation? I said, Doug, I'm black. I think I get it, right? And he's like, yeah, I get it, but maybe you could, and he was really smart about this. Maybe you could come in and help me understand what I'm missing. Okay, that was really smart.
I meant that.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
No, I meant that.
Oh, no, okay, I know you're going to lie, but I learned. So this is the point was, whether you knew it or not, I learned what I didn't think I needed to learn. I came to this session with 2 days. And at the end of it, there's a lot going on there, but at the end of it, Doug was the entire day for 2 days, the CEO of the largest retailer in the world now. And he had his people who he staked and people who he's done business with on his side, and he had also other white executives, and he had some prominent black executives, and then people like me on the other, and we all learned. At the end of it, one of the questions was, and I've asked this question to other executives now, have you ever thought about being white? Everybody who was white says, no, I never thought about it at all. Black people, you ever thought about being black? These are very successful black people all the time, every 28 minutes. There you go. There is a microcosm of the challenges that we see, that people are looking at life through completely different lenses. And as chairman of the Business Roundtable, you now have an opportunity to export this care and thought to influence, as Dan Schulman said in the session before this, some of the biggest companies in the world. One last thing, and I want you to talk about what you're doing with associates and what you're doing in your stores and what you're doing with communities to level this playing field and what your thoughts are personally about the moment that we're in. But I challenged you one day privately to be what I call a Woodruff era leader. Remember that, Doug?
Yes, sir.
And you actually took the challenge. You said I'd be honored to. And so for those who don't know, Robert Woodruff was the CEO of Coca-Cola. Make a long story short, Dr. King was coming back from the Nobel Peace Prize. He had won it. Leaders in Atlanta didn't want to honor him, business leaders. The mayor, just real quick so we can get to Doug, the mayor went to the CEO of Coke, who then went to the former CEO of Coke, who had this credibility. He was out hunting, Robert McMillion, and said, we have a problem. Robert came back, got all the business leaders in his office and said, now look, I don't care whether you like Dr. King or you don't. I don't care whether you like this moment or you don't. Of course, change is uncomfortable. But this man has won the most important award in the world. And we're a global supply chain company. So if you don't respect that this needs to be respected, we're going to move out of this little backwards town and go someplace where people who have some sense. Move out of Atlanta. Well, within 2 weeks, of course, all those folks are doing business with Coca-Cola. Within 2 weeks, the ballroom was full. No one knew he did it. It was never broadcast, and Dr. King in the short term did not know what had happened. But he used his balance sheet and his budget and his credibility to help to get people see the benefit of their better angels. And Atlanta, Coca-Cola, of course, has benefited from that type of leadership. I would like to see that today. And I think you and others have the opportunity to be a Woodruff-like leader. Doug, tell me what's on your mind and some of the great stuff that you're up to at Walmart. And what bothers you?
Yeah, first of all, I'd say I'm really enjoying getting to know you, and I see your light and appreciate the impact and influence that you're having on me, and basically don't want to miss this shot. Like Hamilton comes to mind. My faith would tell me I only get one life here, and I want to serve and make a difference and don't want to miss an opportunity to make things better holistically. And I have found myself, as you described with the move to Bentonville, being part of a company that has the place in the world to make a difference. And I've seen it happen. And when we're at our best, we have strong values, we have a clear purpose, we really do make a difference. So as it relates to racial equity specifically, clearly there was work happening inside the company forever, always, progress made. It starts there. If you don't do everything you should do within the company, you don't have much of a voice and a right to speak. And we're not perfect here and have a lot of work to do. And to unlock everything that needs to be unlocked so that we can get there, the leaders, starting with me, have to keep listening and learning And that's why I wanted you to come to the Racial Equity Institute, why I went through it twice, why I'll probably go through it again, and why I'll do other things. Because I am learning. I didn't think about being white. I now see the world a completely different way, understand a part of history that I didn't understand before, and feel like I'm making progress in that journey, and I'm trying to lead the company to be a better company. Beyond that, working at Walmart, we have the opportunity to leverage the core business to make a bigger difference outside economically and in other ways. And we've done that more effectively with environmental sustainability than we've done as it relates to the social side of things and racial equity specifically. But what happened with George Floyd and so many others before and after gave us a moment to step forward more aggressively during this pliable moment where so many Americans, all kinds of people said enough is enough. We need to understand these issues and we need to put some of this stuff behind us, acknowledge the truth and put some of this stuff behind us. That gave us this moment to step forward more boldly. So together with our African American Officer Caucus and others in the company, we are doing that. So focused on 4 systems: financial system, educational system, healthcare system, and criminal justice. We're looking for our policies, where our purchase orders go, where our money goes, all those kinds of things, to try and make progress on those systems. We also put together a Center for Racial Equity and funded it with $100 million, which will help some. But I think this core systems work, getting at groundwater issues when we can, but certainly shaping those complex systems in the way that they're interrelated, gives us an opportunity to use Walmart to do good for the country and more broadly. And that's what we're trying to do.
So, Doug, it strikes me that you coming to work at Walmart as an associate at an early age allowed you to see the struggle of other working class people who had too much money at the end of their money and have compassion for those people. And you bring that with you to this job. So I can see like the resonance there and why you understand the struggles of others. In fact, I'll go one step further and say, if you grew up in Memphis and you grew up in the South, basically, you probably understood the struggles of our poor white brothers and sisters more than you understood the struggles or saw the struggles of our black and brown urban brothers and sisters, just because that's the environment that you grew up in. And I sometimes we forget that there are 3 groups of people who've been aggrieved in this country and left behind: Native American Indians, African Americans, and what we call poor whites, the struggling white population that came from Britain as indentured servants. The difference was that they were allowed to continue as indentured servants and blacks became slaves, even though they ran off together. People don't realize blacks and whites actually ran off together to get away from their oppressor. And in order to break that friendship up, the oppressor in the early 1600s gave when they caught all 3, 2 whites and 1 black, they gave the 2 whites a couple more years of indentured servitude, but they gave the black a life sentence. That was the beginning of slavery, effectively. And then they recreated the word white to differentiate the poor white and align them up and to create black as this outlier effect that you then had to look down at. So we've had these poor whites and poor blacks almost unintentionally fighting at each other when really they should be brothers and sisters. They have the same struggle. Blacks more so because of slavery, but the same struggle or similar struggles. But we're spending all this energy throwing rocks at each other. And if I didn't know you, I'd say, well, you understand the struggling white, rural white dilemma, and a lot of your stories are serving these groups, these populations. But how do you understand the black dilemma? How do you understand where the compassion and empathy for what black America's coming from and through? Where'd that come from? Because I don't get that lineage. You picked it up somewhere. Was that mom and dad? Faith and a sense of fairness, and growing up participating in sports and having black friends to an extent. Sports.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, we were friends at school and on the court, but when we went home, we led separate lives.
Yeah.
Which bothers me now, because I could have done more to understand what was going on than I did at the moment. Yeah. But I do think your point about poverty is really super important. I mean, Dr. King's work underlines that same point, especially near the end as he really started focusing on that as a root issue. I was in a store a few months ago, and a customer was talking to a store manager in a way that I knew something was wrong when I walked in the store. And I saw them standing in the action alley and walked over to listen in. And this customer happens to be a white mom, is upset because we're out of stock on some items that she desperately needs, that she buys all the time, that are lower price point items that we sell. We would call them an opening price point.
Okay.
And with the pandemic, we've had way too many out of stocks. The supply chain got stressed, and it put more pressure, as this whole experience has, on people that are disadvantaged than it did those of us that are advantaged in so many different ways. One of the ways is if you had money and you knew what was going on, you stocked up early. And those that didn't have enough money at the end of the pay period, if they had a job, couldn't actually get what they needed, and they certainly couldn't afford premium products.
Right.
So she's letting the store manager have it. And as we engaged in a conversation with her, we later went on to hear and understand that she had $20 to make it till the end of the month. She had a developmentally disabled child who had been at home because school was closed, and she had a job and couldn't educate him, and her husband got laid off. She needed to buy gas. Just the stress of her life came out, and our store managers are sometimes counselors. That's what was happening in this case. That person could have been white, black, whatever. That common thread is one of the things we need to address, and I know that's a big part of your life's work. And in our case, we have a purpose that comes from our founder that says we save people money so they can live a better life, a better lifestyle. As Sam Walton was dying with cancer, that's what his words were to all the rest of us. The secret is if we all work together, we can help people. And that's probably the primary reason I'm still here.
People forget, Doug, that Walmart was once founded by a poor white gentleman with a high school education, a pickup truck, and a storefront. And it's now, of course, become Walmart, but it was just his little vision made real. It's like that is the ultimate up from nothing story, and you guys have kept a lot of that fiber with you as you've grown. And there, of course, there's more poor whites in America during Dr. King's day and today than anybody else. Somehow black people became the poster child for poverty, but really there are more poor whites than anybody else. We're all in this mess together. And if you're middle class, you feel like you're poor with too much month at the end of your money. And that's why I think Walmart does a great job of leveling the cost basis playing field for most Americans. You've transformed that for communities. I think you've done things for associates, though, during this pandemic to give them a break. Specifically, Doug, what have you done for associates during the COVID crisis and the economic crisis, and for, if you want to extend on that, communities that you serve?
Yeah, we were probably late in February, early in March, when it became clear to us there were 5 priorities that we had to have through the pandemic. In the beginning, John, it was really chaotic. We had stores in China. We kind of saw this coming in early January, but it didn't really start to sink in how significant this was until the beginning of February. And after scrambling, 24/7 to make decisions for a week or two, we were like, wait a minute, what are we trying to do here? Goal 1 became support our associates on the front line and keep them safe.
Yeah.
Goal 2, keep the supply chain moving, help customers. If they can't buy food, we're really going to have a problem as a country. They got to have a supply chain. Yeah. Number 3, help others. We knew we were going to have stores that were open and cash flow. So forgiving rents at the front of the store and stuff like that, extend terms for suppliers. Step 4, manage the business. Don't find yourself in a cash crunch or an inventory problem and harm the business during a crisis. And then 5, if you have any bandwidth left, try to make progress on the strategy that you had when you started the year. Okay. The first one was the associate. So associates needed money. They needed emotional care and appreciation. Mm-hmm. But maybe first they needed safety.
Yep.
So the focus was on distancing, PPE, change the store hours, clean, all the things that we did, the leave policy. If you need to take care of a loved one, think you might be sick, there were 3 categories, don't come to work. And we've ended up during the course of this year hiring 500,000 new associates to help fill hours because so many of our associates took leave.
Did you say
at different times
500,000?
because they needed 500,000, 500,000 new associates, more than 400,000 of those in the United States alone. These are people that were working at an independent restaurant or somewhere and their job just disappeared overnight. We were a place that needed help. We had more grocery orders to pick in the store for pickup and delivery, which is a growing part of our business. We needed people. So our team figured out how to hire people in 24 hours, and it had been taking us 2 weeks.
Wow.
So they changed everything. They looked at the background check differently. They approached the whole process differently. And all of a sudden, we are hiring so many people through the first part of this year. So health and safety was first. Money was second. We've been raising wages over the last few years, would like to raise wages even more. Just recently, we announced another wave of increases for 180,000 people in the U.S. So we're trying to grow our sales, manage our margins, invest to compete in e-commerce, build an omni-channel business. And every time we get a chance, just keep bumping wages and benefits up. Don't take away cash bonuses. Don't take away equity match. We invest over $1 billion a year for people to own Walmart stock. I got a question in one media interview this year about, well, you're benefiting because the Walmart share price is going up. And I failed to answer the question well in the moment because I couldn't hear it very well. But we have over 250,000 Walmart associates that own Walmart stock. And
Wow.
they are benefiting. Back to the point of wealth versus income.
That's right.
We want to build wealth for our associates, just like Sam Walton did with profit sharing when he initially set it up. So we've done some special cash bonuses, trying to protect the liquidity of the company while giving our associates as much as we can. So it starts with health and safety, then financial well-being, and then they need to be appreciated and supported. And there's this whole emotional and mental health aspect of getting up and going to work every day during a pandemic. You're worried about your safety, and so all of those things have been important to us.
Yeah, and I want to come back to something I thought was shocking, but it makes sense. You have stores around the world, so almost, you have as much intelligence and maybe even better than governments in signaling problems that are ping-ponging that may be a global issue coming from around the world. So you were able to see what was going on in China through your stores there, I'm assuming, before it even made its way here.
Right.
Oh, in January.
But I don't want you to think that we immediately knew in January how big of a deal this was going to be. I mean, in the beginning, it was like, what's happening? And China, this part of China is doing what? Our stores were closing. Our store managers, our country president in China all rushed in to help. And it took a few weeks for us to figure out just how significant this was going to be for all of us.
Yeah, and you guys pivoted really, really well. I know my family goes to Walmart every week because we feel safe. You practice social distancing. You respect your associates. People have a good attitude because they're reasonably compensated and feel that they are not just as Wayne Hamilton there told me. A black employee has to feel not just needed, but they have to feel wanted. And that the CEO has to be accountable for that at the top. We know we're needed. We don't know we're wanted. It's a big difference. You're paying your people a living wage now, aren't you?
Oh, it depends. It depends on how you qualify a living wage. And we've got some roles like part-time cashiers that probably wouldn't qualify with most definitions. But I think here's the challenge.
But you're full-time people.
The way that I think of it is Walmart's a ladder.
Right.
And we want to have that first rung be at a position where you can get started.
Right.
If we go too fast on our minimum wage or the country's minimum wage and those lower rungs get eliminated, I think that'd be a problem. Right. So we think about part-time versus full-time, not just hourly wage, but cash compensation, right, quarterly bonus based on store performance, the whole suite of things.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is we've got about 75% of our store management that started as hourly. So we have a ton of people like me that just started at an hourly, wage, wanting a job for the summer or to make money for college or whatever, and they find themselves here 25 years later, and it's because they've climbed that ladder. So I think we're a system thinker. We're trying to create a meritocracy.
Yep.
That is opportunity.
And a percentage of your associates also own stock, which you just mentioned, and share in the aspiration of the company. What are the things that you've learned in the COVID crisis what things will stick that are just not temporary for right now? What is the sort of ahas that the lights that are on that you actually think is a reality in 2020, but good for business and good for America, or good for the world, you're a global company, and good for leadership?
The first thing that comes to mind is I guess human spirit, the ability to rise to an occasion. What I have seen our associates do has been amazing. One of the things that was important was that they saw leaders in the stores with them. We've got some people who've been able to work from home, but we've got the vast majority of our associates going to work with the public every day. So when we're out, beginning, middle, and end of this whole process, that inspiration that comes from having conversations with people that, when you don't know, because of how much uncertainty there was with this virus in the beginning, to what degree you're safe, and you just come to work anyway. And you put your face covering on, and you wash your hands, and you do all the deep cleaning at night, and you put up plexiglass, and you just serve people. And some of those people are stressed, unhappy, and we got out of stocks, so you're getting chewed on by a customer who's upset for you. You're out of toilet paper. It's sometimes a challenge, and these people are just looking at us like, "Hey, we got this. Get us some toilet paper. Get us some hand sanitizer. Ship us some facial coverings.
Right.
But don't worry about us. We got this. We will open this store tomorrow, and it will run, and we will take care of people." So that's one thing. Corporately, kind of company type answer would all be about speed. Our leadership team has just been amazing. Pace of decisions. The problem they've got with me now is I've now seen how fast they can go.
That's right. So now let's go.
So how do you keep people from getting worn out and fatigued through this whole process? That's obviously one of the things on my mind, because we've now shown ourselves just how creative we can be and how fast we can go.
Right. And in some ways you're a country. I mean, it's I can't turn on the TV without seeing Walmart being involved in one thing or another, just because of you're in every community and you're interacting with life and life's interacting with you. So given that you have your hand on the pulse of the nation, and I asked for it, by the way, because I knew I was going to enjoy this interview, and the one coming after this as well. I was going to enjoy this so much. I asked for a little bit of stretch time, a little bit more time. I want to make sure my people that I do have some more time with you. I know you got a company to run, but they'll give me the high sign if I need to stop. But okay, so two quick, crisp questions. One, what does healing of a nation look like for you as CEO of Walmart, as an American, as a human being, as a person of spirit, of a soul, the children, the child of these great parents of yours? What does healing of a nation look like to you? Number two, what can the Business Roundtable do? What can business do? 90% of all jobs come from the private sector. 100% of all legitimate wealth comes from free enterprise. Can we have Woodruff era leaders today?
We've got to. I think the future of our country is at stake, and it's really weird to sincerely feel that way. Growing up thinking that America was so strong, and in many ways we are, and I'm proud to be an American, but we are imperfect, and our history is flawed, and this situation is more fragile than what it would have appeared to me at an earlier age. So the healing of a nation to me looks like the overlap of a Venn diagram. And many Americans feel like that overlap is shallow. And it's my experience that it's not at all shallow. We have so much more in common than we do different. We want to take care of our families. We want our kids to have a better life than we did. All of those things we share. As you mentioned earlier, if you can look past some of the things that we're somehow distracted with today as differences and see what's in common, to me, that's the key. And I don't think we can rely on Congress to do that for us. I think the people have to do it. We just have to say that's enough. This divisiveness that is being caused by whatever, media, government, foreign countries, whatever it is, we are in the position to say, that's enough. I'm going to love my neighbor. And by the way, everybody's my neighbor.
That's right.
And we're all in the same boat. I heard you say earlier today, if you and I are in the same boat and the hole's near me, you need to care about the hole in my boat because it's our boat. Our country is our boat. That's right. And it's got holes in it, and we got to come together and fix it. Business Roundtable is an organization of the largest companies in the country, 200 or so. And I've been involved for a few years now, and I can tell you that these leaders are capable and they want to do good. And recently, it's been over a year ago now, this group came out with a definition of a corporation that has a multi-stakeholder view. Communities matter, the planet matters, our associates matter, of course our customers matter, shareholders matter, but we're trying to design a system that benefits all of them and make decisions that help everybody because that's what's in the best interest of the business in the long term. The shareholders do better if you have a long-term multi-stakeholder view. That's the case that we're trying to make. And so, we leaned in on racial equity, even getting into policing reform, which businesses would not generally be as involved in as we've been because we care about this country. If this country does not do well, our businesses are not going to do well, and we want to help in every way that we can help. So that's what we're trying to do.
Well, as we wrap up, you just confirmed my gut about you again. And I'm going to encourage every leader that's watching this, every leader in the making that's watching this, every community that's watching this, every leader from government, community, and the private sector watching this, to be inspired by this interview and from the largest company on the Fortune 500 list saying that racism is really bad for business. It's bad for your spirit too, but it's also bad for business. We just need to knock all this off. Just knock it off, and let's get on with the business of being each other's neighbors. It's actually, it's more profitable and it makes you feel better too. Thank you very much, Doug.
Well said. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Welcome back to the Hope Global Forum. I'm John Hope Bryant, founder of Operation Hope, resetting a nation, resetting America, healing our souls and healing a nation, opportunity for all. I could be talking about this forum, I could be talking about the NFL because the NFL and that shield is embedded in our spirit. I'm about to introduce somebody who really could do this session all by himself. He's that cool, he's that comfortable, and he's that courageous. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing formally my friend Roger Goodell, the commissioner for the NFL. He's the 8th Chief Executive Officer of the NFL, having recently completed his 100th season. Under Commissioner Goodell's leadership, the NFL has focused on improving improvements to player health and safety, benefits for retired players, thank you, the league's personal conduct policy, expanding social responsibility initiatives, and diversity in hiring practices. None of that explains Roger Goodell. It does explain what he's been up to, some of it. Roger is one of those people you want to hug, not shake their hands when you see him, which makes this difficult, this moment we're in now, really tough. But he's got this sharp intellect, but this warm spirit. You just feel immediately like he's your friend, and he's not playing a game with you. He's authentic. And I also like that Roger doesn't tell you what you want to hear. If Roger likes you and believes in you, he'll tell you. If he thinks you're full of mess, he'll tell you that too, which probably got him in some trouble. But it also gives you more credibility because people know where you stand. We've got a partnership together, the NFL and Operation Hope. They selected us to be part of their economic empowerment agenda well before the issue with George Floyd and his social justice reckoning. He was ahead of schedule, ahead of where the nation was. And then when all this happened, well, even before this happened, they renewed the commitment because they thought it was so important. And I want to give Jed York some credit for being the first team within the NFL to match what was being done at the national level. But really, Roger, in some ways, spiritually and emotionally, this is one of the most important conversations I could have with any leader, because the National Football League is embedded into the soul and the psyche of America herself. And it's the one Let me stop. By the way, that's the coolest office. I thought that Dan Schulman's office was cool enough. That I'm just gonna come. I don't know. We're not going to lunch at a restaurant. We're not. When I come there, when we can find a meeting, I'm coming to your office.
John, you're welcome right here. And I just want to make sure, first, thank you for your really nice comments. I want to make sure all of the listeners today realize that I am not 100 years old, okay? The league is 100 years old. I have not been here that entire time in this office, but I've been privileged to be there when we celebrate our 100th birthday, as you mentioned, and
right.
It's a thrill to be here with you today, too, John, as always.
Yeah, no, honored to have you with us. And you're sitting really in a moment in history. And you have this 400-year-old social justice reckoning for Black America. You have a global health pandemic with COVID-19. We have this economic crisis, all three of which has affected your brand, your business, your players. You got to think about all that with folks in the stands and communities you serve. But as I go back to my original comment, the NFL is in many ways the soul of this country, and or shares the soulfulness of this country. And it's the one place where sports, where people could come together, black and white, rich and poor, a billionaire next to a millionaire, next to somebody trying to buy some air, Republicans and Democrats, and everybody would get along for a few hours, rooting, at least on that side of the stadium, for the same team. And you now find yourself in a more complicated world. Why did you think that it was important to lean into the moment versus just standing back and letting the moment pass you by? Do you see the NFL as part of the soul of this country and playing a role in our healing?
John, you know, I've always looked at the National Football League as a unifier. To your point, we bring people together, and people from different backgrounds, whether it's on the field, in our locker rooms, or whether it's our fan base, which is 200 million people. Wow. And so we have to play that role, and we want to play that role. And I've always said to our staff and to our membership and to our players, really, that we are in a leadership position, and we accept that with humility, but also the responsibility that comes with that to make sure that we're doing things the right way. I don't think today's world that we're living in, you mentioned all the things that are going on around us, I don't think anyone, either as an individual, as a corporation, or an organization, can sit back and not lean in and not help make the world a better place. We all need to, and we all have to do what we can. Certain people can do certain things really well. Certain organizations can do well. Yeah. I know the National Football League has made a difference in our history at various stages. We've helped heal our nation after 2001, 9/11. We certainly have played roles in different parts of our history, and I think we will be seen that way again as we work through these challenges that we're going through right now. And we will be better off. We will come through this better. But all of us are going to have to find a way to contribute to that, to make that happen. And we have a saying around here, it takes all of us. And I believe that. It takes all of us.
This is certainly not a popularity contest sometimes, leadership. As I think about good leaders, you know, Abraham Lincoln did not have a popularity contest. He barely got elected. And he had people who loved him and people, of course, who meant him harm. And then you can fast forward to, Madam C.J. Walker, all the sort of the heroes and sheroes of the civil rights movement. You go to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and my mentor, Ambassador Young. I mean, Ambassador Young became mayor. His friends picketed him at the city hall the day after he was elected. His friends. Yep. You have Dr. King would show up at a city at an airport. The mayor wouldn't meet him. The people I've just mentioned that when he got the Nobel Peace Prize, the business community in Atlanta didn't want to honor him. Other members of the civil rights community resented him or were jealous of him. He couldn't win. But he knew he was doing the right thing. And of course, history has treated him well. You don't have the benefit of hindsight. You're in the middle of it. And let's just talk about the elephant in the room, because I know you're comfortable with every conversation. You had players who took a knee. You had Colin Kaepernick. You had this social movement within the ranks of the NFL that was really really in many ways a signal of challenges to come. Let me give my context on this, and then you can amplify or disagree or whatever any way you want. But as a black man myself, coming from Compton, California, and being homeless in South Central, I always think about all those I left behind in what we call the hood, the neighborhood. My guess is there are a lot of players got these contracts. They're basically, gladiator celebrities today. They're rock stars in their communities and around the world. They have these contracts. They're successful, but they feel they've left all their problems and all their friends and family behind, and they can't help them. They can't bring them in the locker room. They can't bring them into their net worth. And I feel that taking a knee, for lack of a better description, when they saw this injustice happening, was almost the only thing they thought they could do to bring attention to a problem that was affecting so many. They didn't know what else to do. They didn't have any other tools to use, which is why I think this economic piece that you're doing now and other things, giving people something to do meaningfully is so important. But let me back up. Do you think I hit that right, that this was something that...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I hit you. You hit it exactly right. People forget that our players are human beings. They come from communities. They come from families. They are fathers. They're brothers. They're sons. They're human beings, and they are remarkable human beings. Not just for what they do on the field. What I admire most about our players is not the skills on the field. It's the men that they are.
Yeah.
It's more than, I have a responsibility back to my community. They care deeply about it, John. They with their heart and soul. And, when Colin and Eric Reed and Kenny Stills and Anquan Bolden and Malcolm Jenkins, all players, and going back to 2014, our players have always stood up and brought attention to issues that need focus and need attention. And they have that platform, and they used it. And I admired that. And that started a really important dialogue that really helped a lot of us understand better what's going on in those communities. I, for one, I'm the first to say it. It's hard to imagine some of the things that we've seen played out on our screens. We see it on video now, but listening to our players, I felt it. I went with them on ride-alongs. I went with them into the communities. I went to a bail hearing, and we really had an opportunity to understand, is our system, there are lots of things wrong with the system, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's only wrong if we sit and we accept that and don't do something to change it. And so that was a commitment we made several years ago with our players, is to work with the Players Coalition and to help fund their efforts, as well as efforts of many great organizations like yours, John.
Thank you.
And also really be focused on those 4 key pillars, really, which was economic advancement, education, policing and communities, and criminal justice reform. All of those things that's where our focus has been. But we've also gone beyond that, John, and you've seen it playing out right now. It was one of the things the players really wanted to do. And a focus for them last summer was, how do we get people out to vote? Everybody has a vote.
Aren't you using your stadiums as polling places?
We are. We're using 16 of our stadiums. We offered all of them, all 30 of them. But the various entities would have to approve that in each community. But 16 of our stadiums will be used as polling places. Sometimes while games are going on, by the way.
Wow.
But we think that that's great, because what we're trying to do is encourage America to participate and to be part of the solution by exercising your vote. That's our given right as Americans, and we all need to do it. And so we have been working to register people to come out. We've been working to educate them so that they have the best information to make a choice however they wish, and to go ahead and go to the polls and actually pull the levers and make sure that they're doing it. But I want to make one other point here. It's not just this election. It's just not a presidential election. Really, some of the most impactful elections, as you know, particularly when you get into criminal justice reform and on policing. Those things are really, to a large extent, done locally.
Yep.
So the mayor and the county executive and maybe sometimes the governor, but those things are really important for us to be involved with, to understand what's on the ballot, get involved, and make sure that we're putting people in place that are going to drive the things that we believe in.
I'm getting almost more questions from the floor for you than anybody else. I'm trying to respond to not only what I wanted to ask you, but some of these questions. And one of them is, what do you say to those fans who want the players to stop, who wanted the players or want the players to stop kneeling and to just stop talking about social justice and just play? I mean, again, being you must be like Chinese water torture or something, or like ready fire herding cats. You can't make it. There's no way to make everybody happy. How did you respond to that?
It just goes back to your point about leadership. To me, I don't come in here every day and sit at this desk to try to make people happy. What I do is try to do the right thing.
That's right.
And try to do what's right for not just the NFL, but for our communities that we live in. And so for me, our players have a voice. They have a platform. They should exercise that. I want to make it clear to everybody who may be listening here, I certainly understand those who come to watch a football game. But remember here, these are men that have families and have been impacted directly by these issues who are bringing attention to that. They are not, and I want to be really clear with this, they're not being unpatriotic.
That's right.
This is not against the flag.
That's right.
These young men care deeply about what's happening in their community, and this is the attention they're trying to bring it to it. But more importantly, it goes beyond the attention, John. As you know, bringing attention to an issue and not having an impact on the change that's needed to get us to a better place in our communities and our society and is really sort of a lost opportunity. So these guys are committed. It's not just what we're doing, the Players Coalition, and committing, the $250 million over 10 years and,
right.
and the work that we're doing, that all the attention we're bringing to it to inspire change. It's actually being there and meeting with legislators, meeting with mayors, meeting with chiefs of police, and really effectuating change on a local level that is making our communities better. And that's what makes me proud. And we're doing it with the players and the league and the clubs and the owners, everyone pulling together, and along with great partners that we have as part of our social change, that really we are leading ourselves to a better place. And we're trying to do our part and more. And I think all of us have to do more.
This issue of taking a knee, I think that the players I've spoken to see this as not only not being patriotic, they actually think they're being very patriotic. They think that they're living up to the creed of the very values that America and her founders were founded on, and the Bill of Rights, the really the vaulted values of our Constitution, the soaring rhetoric of freedom and justice for all. And Dr. King and Ambassador Andrew Young, who is here, his aide, the only living aide still with us in the world, they would consciously disobey what they thought were unjust laws. They notified the sheriff before they showed up. They weren't trying to create trouble. They said, we're coming to town. We're going to protest civil disobedience. We're not going to make any trouble, but we are going to make ourselves known. And we're going to take a knee. We're going to sit down. We're going to protest. We're going to sit in because we think that attention needs to be directed toward this injustice. It's an unjust law, X, Y, and Z, having separate water fountains or whatever the thing was at that time. But they fully expected they would be arrested. They fully expected that the local courts would prosecute them. And they just believed that by the time it got to the Supreme Court, that supreme thought would take heed, and they were right about that. And they also got the media's attention. But it was designed to bring out the best in us, Roger. But rainbows only follow storms. You cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. So I think that if people will just step back for a minute, they can see that these players had good intentions. We can argue about whether it's the right strategy, but it was the best of intentions. And now taking a knee is being, I believe, replaced with taking a position and taking back their communities. Can you talk a little bit about the Inspired Change Initiative and what you're doing there?
Yeah, John, because when we're demonstrating, we're bringing attention to things that need to be addressed and that things that are wrong. And I think the thing that individuals, organizations all struggle with, okay, what do we do to help?
Right.
How do we help lead to that change that we all want?
Right.
We all want to stop racism. We all want to stop oppression of people. We all want to provide opportunities and bring equality to everybody in our communities. How do we do it? And so our effort was to come under this banner of Inspired Change, which is our efforts not just to partner with others who are doing great work in those communities, but bring attention to the great things that are happening in our communities, the things that aren't so great in our communities, but inspire us all to try to be part of that change, part of that movement to make a better community. And, we have that platform, and that's really important for us to use that. Our players will do it, but we really want to go back to the fact that we have to go beyond the demonstrations and go into actually doing the hard work in communities. And that's what our players are doing. That's what makes me so proud.
Yeah.
Our players, our owners, the league, we're all going in and we're trying to make changes in our communities that are, to me, are sustainable, they're impactful, and they are incredibly needed in our communities. If you go in there and you see it, you go to a bail bond hearing, you just can't believe your eyes.
Yep.
You can't believe what you're watching, and that's not justice. And so how do we effectuate that? We're a football league, but it's going to community leaders and talking about what can we do to make a better system.
Yeah, oftentimes today justice feels like just us. And to rationalize is to tell rational lies. And we've got to find a different way to operate because, as I've said earlier, blaming your problems on your neighbor doesn't solve any of your problems or even make you any richer. You're no better off. And it doesn't solve, it just makes things worse. So we've got to become better neighbors and see that we're all bound up together. Racism is just bad for business. Be honest, it's bad for your heart. It's bad for business.
There's no place for it, period.
There's no place for it, period.
And hey, same with hate. And we've talked about it a little bit in our time, but I grew up in Washington, D.C. in the 60s. My dad was in the Senate at the time. And, I saw what was going on with the civil rights movement. I saw what's going on with the anti-war movements. And I would walk home from school and there'd be police and, authorities all over the streets. What's different today to me, John, though, is that it's everyone pulling together. White people, black people, brown people, Asian people. Everybody's sort of saying, this is not right.
Yeah.
We got to fix it. And frustrations of why we haven't to date. And so I really believe we're at a moment here where real change is going to happen, and we want to be part of that.
As we wrap up, the last couple of minutes we have here together, Roger, I admire your courage, man. You remind me of something. There's a couple of things I'd like to say. I'd rather you respect me and learn to like me than like me and never respect me, number one. Number two, talk without being offensive, listen without being defensive, and always leave even your adversary with their dignity. If you don't, they'll spend the rest of their life trying to make you miserable. You seem to apply both of those things to your life. You just sort of brush things off, and you rise above continually, even when you're not being treated fairly. Where does that inner constitution come from in you? Where did you get your sense of fairness and decency and fair play? Why do you care so much about somebody who is in a different socioeconomic state than you? Beyond you don't need this job. You don't need to do this. You can leave tomorrow. Why? Why bother?
Well, a couple things. I go back to my parents. I think that's my foundation. I've just been really fortunate to have wonderful people around me. I lost both my parents way too early, but they were incredible influences on me. And my father, I'll tell you this story quickly, was a U.S. Senator. He replaced Bobby Kennedy in the 60s when he was assassinated. And he decided to come out against the Vietnam War. And that was one of his first acts, because he frankly had heard this from many college students going around New York State, and Cornell in particular. And I remember him coming home and sitting all of us, and I'm one of 5 boys, John, and sat with my mother and my father. And my dad explained he's going to introduce legislation to end the Vietnam War. He was a liberal Republican. He knew that he would get a negative reaction from President Nixon. I think he underestimated that reaction, by the way. And they came after him. And he said, I will lose the election in 70 because of this.
Wow.
And he loved public service. He loved being a United States Senator. He loved being in Congress. He was 9 years in the House before that. But he did it because it was right. And he introduced that legislation, and it's proven to be right. From that moment on, I understood that you have to do things on principle. You have to the courage to do things that are right, regardless of the consequences. Whether you lose your job or you lose your position, that's not important. What's important is you do the right thing. And so that was really the foundation for me that drives me every day here. I also have a really deep belief in this institution, the National Football League. I believe in the power that it has to change lives for the better. Just playing this season, John, as an example. We've worked really hard in the off season to change everything we do, to adapt, to do it safely for everybody, from players to coaches to our personnel to our fans. And we had to do that, and you had to throw everything up upside down and do it again. And playing was a part of that message that we can live with this virus. We can operate effectively with the virus. We can bring some normalcy, and the NFL does represent some of that. So there was a piece of that the players and the NFL coming together to try to do that was an important message, particularly as we're going through all the other challenges, whether they're economic or social, and what we can do. This gives us a platform to continue to try to make an impact on that. And so this season, 2020, coming after our 100th last year, where we celebrated our history, we said we knew the future would be different. I'm not sure we ever would have imagined it was going to be quite so different in 2020. But it's been a real growth period for us and a learning period for us to show we can do things we didn't imagine, and we can do things that can have a real impact on people. And it may be some of the proudest days I've had being commissioner of the NFL is seeing how we've elevated ourselves and really tried to do something great for our country and for people around the world.
My team's telling me that I can ask you another question, maybe 2. So if you're good.
You're the boss, John.
No, actually I'm not. But I'm glad it looks that way. But this is such an important conversation, Roger. And very, very few chances to have these candid conversations with no agendas, and people can relax and really just have a heart-to-heart with our fellow men and women to hopefully role model leadership. This is what leadership should look like, and decency. Going back to '68, because I didn't know this, your dad replaced Bobby Kennedy. Was '68 Dr. King was assassinated?
Correct. April 4th.
In fact, Andrew Young was on that balcony. He's right here. Ambassador Young was on that balcony with Dr. King pointing to the shooter in Memphis. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated 2 years before that, I think. Kennedy was assassinated. 4
years.
4 years ago. 4 years before that. We were rocked with social upheaval and questionings of our own integrity, who we are. It must have been an incredibly tough period. How old were you then?
68, I was 9 years old.
9 years old. Okay, so you remember this. How did your dad deal with taking on this mantle in this time and turning it into something positive? Because you couldn't be obsessed with being liked or popular, particularly get the bills that he introduced. You had to root in your principles. By the way, you now make perfect sense to me. I understand why you do the right thing because you saw it. But what was that moment like with your dad?
Well, I think it was hard because, again, being a United States Senator was really important to him, but it wasn't as important as not doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. And he didn't want to be in the Senate if he didn't speak up. He didn't think that was his role. He thought his role was to listen to the people, to do the best he could to lead and to go in and represent the state of New York. And to me, he did that. And he did it knowing the consequences. Yeah. For me, watching it, as young as I was, I really did see that. It was very clear to me. Yeah. And to hear people criticize my father, again, we're 5 boys in 7 years. Yeah. The Goodell boys fight. And when we fight each other, but if somebody attacks our own, we fight even harder.
All the way to school and all the way back home.
That's correct. And so I will protect anybody, but when you attack my brother, I'm coming after you. But my point is, we cared deeply about my father and my mother, and we saw the pain and difficulty, but they still did it. And I think they did it in part to show us how to live a life, and to live a life of decency, a life of doing the right thing, and, risking things. You can't sit and be safe. And today's, we've talked about a little bit here today. It is not a time to sit and be safe.
That's right.
It's a time to stand up, walk it out there, and make sure you make a difference every day. And I think that's just something that was born in me. And I guess I just had great mentors in life, and I still do. People like you, people who they send you that little message at any given moment that just picks you up and says, we're doing the right thing and working together. I always like to say football is about teamwork. Yeah. And that's what we need is teamwork. We need to come together, work together, and make a difference, because the challenges are pretty extraordinary. Yes. But I do believe we can meet them. And the only way we're going to do that is together.
You make perfect sense to me, Roger. If I had to rename this session, I would say I'd name it the Goodell Brothers Fight. And we fight. You fight for justice. You fight for goodness. You fight, but most of all, you fight for your brother or your sister who's getting beat up next to you, who may not be able to fight for themselves. And that's really what you're doing every day. You're fighting for justice. You're fighting for the underdog. You're fighting for those who are unseen. You're fighting for those who are unheard. And people may not understand it, but they can appreciate it. And one day they will.
They're fighting for people who don't have a voice, John. Listen, we all are very fortunate in some ways, but there are a lot of people out there who aren't as fortunate and aren't getting the things that they need, and we have to do our best to try to help. And that's what we're going to do.
You inspire me, my friend. Let me let you get back to the good fight under the shield of the NFL there. Thanks for spending this time with us at the Hope Global Forum. Thanks for being a change in the world. And I'm honored to be your partner and your friend.
Well, I am too. Thanks for the partnership, but more importantly, the friendship.